Hey Internet, good to see you. Welcome to Worldview Everlasting, your favorite YouTube addiction. Don't really have time for an entire video today due to the cataclysmic events surrounding a number of things, so just going to give you about 2 to 3 minutes here about Greek Tuesday, this coming text for the week from Mark chapter 9 verses 38 through 50, which can be a pretty confusing text, especially if you dive into it and don't look at anything on either side of it, but just try to pull it out by itself and try to make it like this eternally true proverb, standalone kind of wisdom thing. Well, what you're going to really end up doing is having to cut off your hand, pluck out your eye, and a couple of other things. And not to mention, let anybody who says, I'm doing this for Jesus, run around and do whatever they want, which is really not the point of the text. Kind of key to understanding this text is what comes before and after it. Namely, after Jesus has foretold his death and resurrection and nobody gets it, the disciples begin to argue about which one of them is the greatest. And Jesus sets a little child in their midst and tries to begin teaching them that faith is not about what you do. You can't really be great. You can't even achieve anything. Being the sinner that you are, the most you can hope is to be an unworthy servant who receives the grace of Christ and lives in love toward neighbor and toward God. And even then, you haven't really been the greatest. You've been the least. You've been a servant, which is where this is going. So he sets the child in their midst. And then there's this talk about where John comes to him and is like, hey, teacher, we who haven't figured out that we're not the greatest yet decided to tell that other guy over there that he should be quiet and not talk anymore. And Jesus goes into this big thing about how anybody who's actually confessing his name truly and doing a true power in his name, not just any old work, but in the Greek dunama, power, really doing a miracle in his name, actually a miracle, isn't going to be able to speak evil of him. And then he turns around and starts saying some of this Sermon on the Mount kind of language from Matthew, which is really about conviction of sin. And if your eye causes you to sin, you should pluck it out and throw it away. Well, holy moly, I'm going to end up without an entire body by the end of this one. Yes, indeed, that's kind of the point, guys. You going to figure this out anytime soon? Now, right after this, gotta turn the page, there is this teaching on divorce, which is a very hard teaching, something like a teaching of, or a salting of your heart with good salt, as Jesus ends the text right before, a hard teaching to challenge you to understand, again, the depths of your sin. That any kind of desecration of the marriage bed, any kind of breaking of the union of family, man and woman that God has created, is, again, this great evil that we have and that we carry. He's trying, true, divorce is wrong. Yes, adultery is wrong, but the deeper point going on is this whole who is the greatest thing, not you, right? You're not the greatest. That's where he's going. And then it follows up with, catch this, let the little children come to me. Again, the disciples are trying to keep the children away because they don't understand that this is what it's about. Childlike faith, simple faith that has no true power in and of itself. This is followed then by the rich young man who tries to justify himself by, checking at it again, by saying that he has kept the commandments from his childhood. Uh-oh, did I miss something? Where were we going? Oh, well. Yeah, well, we've done pretty good up to this point, I think, seeing that there's been no edits in this video. This is followed up then after this whole I'm going to justify myself thing, and Jesus has to eventually tell the guy that he can't do it. Oh, here it is. With man it is impossible, but not with God. This is who can be saved. With man it is impossible, but not with God. For all things are possible with God. And then he goes in to talk about at the end, those who are first are those who will be last. That there is no greatest or least. There is simply the servant who, failed as we are, receives the grace of Christ. His greatest thing is to be the servant who dies on our behalf. We then, in passive faith, receive this, and any good works we do really amount to nothing, ultimately. Even your station, even if you're placed. If you're made the king of the world, you're still just a servant of all. If you're made a servant of all, you are still a king in God's sight because you are a prince in the nation of Christianity, that is, the nation of the life of the world to come. Not a kingdom of this age, but a kingdom of heaven, indeed. Following this, Jesus foretells his death for a third time. So it's kind of like, hey guys, don't you get it? The only one who is the greatest is me, and I'm becoming least for you. Yeah? Yeah. Hopefully that helps you get through that middle text, which again, if you just take it by itself, is going to seem a little weird and confusing, but if you put it in this bigger context where Jesus is teaching them that no one is the greatest, the first shall be last, the last shall be first, that salvation is impossible but not with God, and that God has sent Christ to do this, resurrection, death and resurrection text being kind of the capstones with this whole thing floating in the middle, the text will make a whole lot more sense for you and will end up with you off somewhere cutting off parts of your body trying to prove how you're really a Christian. Yeah? You with me? Rock on. We'll catch you guys on Friday with the full video. Okay.